And we are back here on Open. Joining us now to share a little bit about what is going on within our community. We're pleased to be joined by New York State Senator Louis Sepulveda, who joins us now. And State Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me on the program again.
Hey, great. Listen, I want to talk about a couple of things and get right at it. Number one, we talked in our political segment about a possible government shutdown. For those people who don't know, here in the borough of the Bronx, how does a government shutdown really affect people right here in our area?
Well, a lot of it has to do with people that are federal employees in the area. That's the biggest impact because many of them won't get paid unless they're essential. They're providing essential services. So it'll make it difficult for you to pay your mortgage, to pay your rent, to buy food. That's probably the way it's impacted the most. You know, everything's local. And then there's some agencies that may not be able to receive funding, that may have to give partial funding, services that will be cut because of the shutdown. So you'll see it. It won't be as big of an impact locally, but it will have some impact for individuals, especially those who work for the federal government.
I see you've been a busy man. In our last segment, we had Sheikh Musa Draman come on and give us an article about the or I should say the newspaper, the Parkchester Times. I see on the front of the Parkchester Times, you're here with Congressman Crowley presenting a congressional certificate and American flag to civil rights activist Claudette Colvin. So
yes.
You've been pretty busy yourself, huh?
Well, you know, we got to be out there talking to people. Anything I can do for Claudette, I do. We've honored her before. People don't know that, but she is herself an historic figure. She was the first person to actually refuse to give up her seat at the back of the bus in Alabama. But she was a young girl with, she had a bad temper, so they didn't think she was an ideal plaintiff for the action. And eventually they settled on Rosa Parks, who had worked with the NAACP and, seemed to be a better plaintiff at the time.
Yeah.
But the first person to do it was Claudette Colvin, who was 16 years old at the time, who was extremely brave. And thanks to her, the whole movement of essentially eviscerating separate but equal began.
An amazing story. A lot of people focus on Rosa Parks, but truly, she's the one that that really gets the credit for being that first person. I want to talk a little bit more about the stabbing that is really taking the hearts and minds of a lot of people across New York City and literally the country when it comes to the stabbing and the Councilman Torres is talking about Lesandro Junior Way, the street renaming for Lesandro. This stabbing is really captured on videotape. We've got more than 15 people arrested. People have now been coming forward with more information. Even to this day, police say the investigation is still wide open. I know that you and others are really pushing for even more to happen. We had a great community outswell, but what more do you want to see done in this?
Well, it was just a terrible, terrible tragedy. It was a display of a completely lack of any sense of a human being. That's just amazing to me. These young men, to do something like that without any regard for the life of a 15-year-old child is what resonates so greatly throughout the world. We're trying to pass legislation that creates safe havens in commercial centers. So if an individual, young man or young woman or a student is leaving their school and they feel they're being threatened, their lives are in danger, they can go into any commercial center, any business, any bodega, any store, any restaurant, and ask for help. And it will obligate the owners of these establishments to, at a minimum, call the police, maybe call 911 if there's an injury, to take some affirmative action to attempt to essentially protect these students, these children, and even seniors, but whoever they feel is in danger. And the reason is because we believe that if you're going to profit from our communities, and we all welcome economic development, but if you're going to profit, then you should also have a responsibility in protecting the lives of our children.
So now let me cut in here because we do know a lot of people have said a lot of controversy surrounding that bodega owner. He came in, Lesandro came in, Junior was looking for help after being stabbed, didn't receive the help from the owner pretty much turning his back. Some people believe that the bodega should be held accountable. Where do you fall with regards to that train of thought?
Well, there's nothing you can do to hold them accountable legally. They had no obligation legally to take any steps to do anything, and that's why we're trying to create this safe haven law. there's not really much you can do against the bodega owners, and of course there's some controversy as to whether they helped or didn't help. But this bill will make it leave no doubt that you do have an obligation to assist someone who's in this position as Junior was. So, let's not leave it to doubt. If you have an establishment and one of our children are in danger, then you have to do everything you can to protect them. And we as a society, not just people who own commercial establishments, but we as a society should have an obligation to protect our children. And this is what this bill is attempting to create, and to make sure that we leave no doubt about your obligation to our children.
Well, we are in the middle of summer and getting ready to head back to Albany. When you get back to Albany, what is the top business item that you have to deal with now?
Well, it's always with me. It all ends and begins with education. We're going to start arguing about the budget and get more money and more funding to our schools. In terms of legislation, of course, Junior's law, the safe haven law, is going to be one of our top priorities. I can tell you that. But I'm also heavily invested in continuing my fight for criminal justice reform in this state. Unfortunately, the criminal justice system in this country is still the new Jim Crow, and it treats young men, African American, Latino communities differently than their white counterparts, and we have to make sure that justice is truly blind in this state. And then you have other projects that you want to work on, more funding for seniors, legislation that puts women on par in terms of their salaries with men, and a pretty hefty progressive agenda that I intend to push up there in Albany.
Well, certainly we want to stay connected to that and know a little bit more about that as time goes on. I know you're enjoying the summer. You're still walking around the district. Talk to me real quickly. What are you hearing in about 30 seconds or less? What are you hearing as some of the main concerns come from residents in your district?
The number one issue always, year after year, no matter what happens with the numbers, is always crime. People want a significant drop in crime. And the number two issue is affordable housing, real affordable housing. People want to live, stay in this community. I want people to remain in this community because to have good economic development, you have to have a good affordable housing program. So those are always the two biggest issues that people talk to us about. And we're going to be working on that in Albany also with our colleagues. And hopefully we'll take the majority in the Senate, the Democrats, and we could certainly dole out a lot more funding for the communities that we represent.
All right, New York State Senator Luis Sepulveda, thank you so much for joining us here on Open, giving us the latest, and thanks much.
Thank you again. Be well.
All righty. Well, to all of our viewers, I want to tell you we've come to the end of our show today, and I definitely want to thank our guests for joining us, but most of all you viewers for tuning in, particularly those who are tuning in here in the borough of the Bronx, as well as Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Now, if you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recablecast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Cablevision's Channel 67. If you have Verizon Fios, that would be 33, or watch us anytime on the web at BronxNet.org. For all of us here on the set of Open, I'm Darren Jaime saying take care and God bless.